Welcome to the Black Women Talk Tech podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Lowe. Each episode features conversations with a Black woman founder building an innovative technology company. Is a collective that identifies, supports, and encourages Black women to build the next billion-dollar business. Hello, this is Chelsea Lowe, and today I'm with Elsie. Elsie is founder and CEO of MommyMonitor. Elsie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So I started off, I'm non-technical, and it's really funny. Whenever I talk about my story and my experience and how I ended up in the tech space, it really started with me doing research during my master's. And during my master's, I did a study where I explored how prenatal program services are, whether or not they're culturally competent and whether or not they're serving the Black community, essentially, more specifically African and Caribbean community here in Toronto. And when I completed that study, I was kind of in a space where I was like, okay, I have all this information. I have these great recommendations of what I think should be happening, but nothing is really going to happen. And I think that awareness and that realization made me understand that, okay, maybe something else has to be done. But it took about a year before I actually did something. And it's really funny. During that year, I was kind of like going to different tech conferences here and there, like whenever I had a chance. And remember, I'm like a healthcare person, like a research type of person. I never had anything to do with tech, but I was like, let me just check out what people are doing. And I remember my university had a health tech conference in particular, but for the Chinese Association at my school. And I went to their conference, and it makes me laugh when I think about it, because like a room filled of people who are from China and like one Black girl like in the back sitting quietly, just listening. And because for me, I was like, I just want to learn, because I didn't really know what was going on and how things were done. But I was like, I need to learn if I want to try to figure out, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to do something. So after some time, I was like, okay, I think I have an idea. And literally it came from one of my recommendations. And it started from the concept of providing truly patient-centered care and truly culturally sensitive care. So I was like, okay, so I understand that Black women are having these adverse outcomes. I understand that they're experiencing maternal healthcare complications at a rate that's much higher than any other group of women. And I understand that they're not getting the care they need. They have issues with access and other barriers that are affecting them. And I also know that genetically, there are some things about Black women that are just different, that are causing them to also have these outcomes. So, okay, what can we do to try to ensure that this stops, essentially, right? Or reduces over time? And the key things that I came to in my research were like, okay, we need increased monitoring and surveillance. We also need culturally competent care, and we need increased social support for women. And the key thing that we realize, especially within the Canadian context, because we have such a huge immigrant population and a lot of people who come here from Africa and the Caribbean, we realize that a lot of people, and Latin America as well, we realize a lot of these women felt alone because they didn't have that community that they would have had back home to support them during pregnancy. So from there, I applied to like one pitch competition and I didn't get it. And I remember being super depressed because it was like 10 people and basically 8 people would get the prize or the funding. I think it was like $5,000, something like that. And I remember I didn't get it. And I was super sad. But the accelerator that was doing the pitch competition was like, we still want to take you on. We want to help you to kind of help your idea to grow so that you can figure out what you're doing. And at first I ignored them because I was like, forget y'all. I was like, you guys, I don't want nothing to do with you. I'm like, I don't care. But then I think I was somewhere else in the world. I don't remember where I was. I was in a hotel room and it just hit me. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try this. And I just Googled online and I saw that the Center for Social Innovation was doing their Agents of Change in community health specifically. And I was like, you know what? Let me just try and apply for this. And with like the things that I saw at that first pitch competition, like how to properly develop a pitch deck, how to pitch, how to kind of mature your idea, I used that information that I learned and I reapplied for the second pitch. And I ended up getting that. And that was my first ever kind of pitch competition, I guess you could say, or competition that I got. And I got double the funds that I would have gotten from the other pitch competition.
Wow.
So for me at that point, and when I was pitching it, realizing that people were like, there's room for this, it made me realize that not only is this a problem within healthcare, and but this is also a possible solution within the healthcare space itself, not just for parents and for women and for families, but also for healthcare institutions and also for healthcare professionals. And that this is something that could work not just in one context, but could work throughout the world. So when I came to that realization, I was like, I think I might have something here. And bigger than that, I think this is something that could really save lives, but if it's done well. So I think that's where this all kind of came from. And it's a large part of the reason why I keep working towards trying to create a MommyMonitor, even as time goes by. And it's been probably about 12 to 18 months since we've really actually been doing stuff, because a lot of our beginning state was just research and trying to build evidence to support the work that we're doing. But I think that we're blessed and things have been moving really quickly. And I'm just really excited for the work to come.
Great. Thanks for sharing so much on your background and kind of the problem with maternal health. Can you talk more about the product and the services or programs that you provide? I saw recently you hosted a conference. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So what's so exciting to me is that I realized, like, stepping into this role or becoming like an entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, like, I realized more than that. For me, it's making an impact, right? A global impact and really saving lives. And how do we save lives? It's by educating, empowering, giving women back autonomy over their bodies and over their pregnancies, and having them understand what their rights are as patients, their reproductive rights, their patient rights. You know what I mean? And especially with Black folk or with racialized communities, really having us understand what our rights are, and removing those myths that we have around fear and those things that have been deep rooted into our healthcare systems from very early on about how we receive care and what type of care we should receive, and like what we should accept as patients. And I think for me, that advocacy piece has become huge. And that's part of the reason why we started the conference. So MommyMonitor, I'll start with the app and I'll kind of break down the programs and services we offer now and then the conference. The app itself is focused on trying to develop a tool that provides really simply on-demand support. And it's changed as time has gone by and as we've worked with different tech people and the idea has matured. But essentially, it's really simple. All we're looking to do is make sure that wherever you live, wherever you are, whether or not you have insurance, whatever your situation looks like, you should be able to use our service to get care from a midwife or a doula or another clinician. We're starting off with midwives and doulas though, but it'll move on to like nurses and other clinicians, but who, regardless of where you are, you should be able to get care from these people and be educated by them. And you should receive it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can you explain the difference between a midwife and a doula?
Yeah, sure. So a midwife is a clinician. So a midwife is almost like it. I would compare them to like a nurse and a doctor. They're within that range, and they can actually they are certified, board certified, and they can actually provide care. They can help you to give birth. They're actual clinicians. A doula is, I think, of more as a support system. They're educated about the process and the experience, and they understand what you need to help you to have a better outcome. So in terms of the support system and the education and that kind of piece of it. So usually people will have both and have them together so that they have a really full support system during their pregnancy. Midwives, depending on where you use services, and I know midwives in Canada and the US, the way they function is slightly different, but I know that generally midwives are a huge support system, but a doula usually comes and fills in the gaps. So if a patient doesn't feel like, especially more so if a patient is working with a physician, an OB or a family physician, and they're actually in the hospital and they're not giving birth in a birth center or at home or whatever that looks like, usually a doula can be that advocacy piece. They can be that person there who can speak up for the parent if they notice something that is not a part of the birth plan or is not something that they know the patient would want. They can be there to provide education to the family and the parents and to the mother. They can be there to just be that kind of spokesperson almost, and that tool and that education piece to really help them to have a safer, healthier, and more comfortable pregnancy. So they're both very valuable pieces of care. They're just very different. Doula is non-clinical and midwife is clinical.
Great, thanks. And can you share more, I guess, about the app?
Yeah, for sure. So The app itself is, we have two different packages, basic and premium. And the focus is to be able to give moms that on-demand support. And then as time goes by, move into a space where we can predict pregnancy complications before they even occur using predictive analytics. But because that includes getting a lot of data or being able to collect enough data to be able to get to that, come to those conclusions, it'll take us a little longer to build the predictive component. But at this moment, the actual piece for MommyMonitor, the app that we're building, the focus is the on-demand support, on-demand care. So being able to have a maternal mentor that you can work with personally, and you can choose whether it's a midwife or a doula. You can choose whether it's someone from the same cultural background as you or whatever that looks like, speaks the same languages, because the key for us is making sure that you feel safe and comfortable and that cultural competency piece is still intact, and that also you understand that care is accessible to you. And then we also provide a forum or a piece where parents can ask questions and have that answered, so that they never feel like they are confused. Because the biggest thing that we get from parents is that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on. I just kind of went with the flow, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't want you to just go with the flow. We want you to be educated. We want you to have all the tools you need right in front of you. And that's like a large piece of what we're doing. So there's a forum, there's maternal mentors that you get. The maternal mentors is an interesting piece. Depending on which package you get, the basic allows you for about an hour to 5 hours of telemedicine, but like over the phone or not in person. But the premium package is more so an opportunity for you to get in-person care. So someone to come to your house, whatever that looks like. And the great part about all of this is that it can work. The way we're trying to build it now is for it to work as almost like a CRM type of package for the actual clinicians and providers, so that they now have a space where they can really organize their patient care and the work that they're doing as well. So if for us, we want it to look like a marketplace almost, where we could go out there and find out who we need when we need them. And so that the clinicians as well and doulas can also be able to find clients that they can work with. And again, the hope is, because the model is done quite simply, we ask questions to you. We send you texts, ask you questions. They send it back to us. We analyze that data. Then we identify show you trends, and help you to understand what your habits look like and what may be risky, so that we can help you mitigate that. But the best part is the maternal mentor is involved in this and helps the parent to also be educated and understand what these risky habits look like. So for example, if you are eating sushi and you don't realize it, or for my West African folk, like if you're eating, or African generally, if you're eating palm oil, the red one, we know that that could be detrimental to pregnancies. But a lot of people don't know that, because culturally it's very normal. It's a very normal food staple, and it's normal to have it in all our foods, but it could be detrimental during pregnancy. So just if we see within the data that you're eating things like that or doing things like that, we can kind of highlight it to you, so you know that, hey, this could be dangerous for you during pregnancy. And then the maternal mentor kind of jumps in and kind of continues with the support. And then if you have a question or whatever, then you can ask that question. And if you want extra support, if you purchase the basic package and you're like, hey, I really just want a midwife to come to my house and just check me out because I don't feel good, then you can also purchase like on-demand services if you want. Ideally, the way we're trying to build it is so that it's extremely low cost. And then also, if it's not low cost, free, depending on who picks it up. So if an organization purchases it for their patients, then that would be ideal, or a hospital. And that's the route we're trying to go, to ensure that populations who need it most get it. But other than that, we try to ensure that it's extremely low cost so that anyone could afford it.
Great. And then you also have the workshops and then the conference as well. Can you talk more about that?
Exactly. And I have to shout out like Ancient Song Doula for this and other services in New York and like the Decolonize Birth Conference and stuff like that I've been able to be there for, just to engage in as a participant. I think that I've been going to that for maybe the past 2 years or something like that. And I've learned so much even from them and just looking at what they're doing, because the one thing that I've identified from the States is that you guys are extremely progressive when it comes to advocacy and policy change, and using that as a model, and not even a model, more so just as a source of influence, almost something that I used to help to kind of give me what I needed to know that it was possible. I kind of came back and was like, okay, it's great to have an app. It's great to do this, but we're still not doing what's really important. And what's important here for there to be true change is for there to be policy change, and for people to truly be educated about their rights. So that's when we started the birth justice workshops. And those are workshops that are facilitated by a midwife. And what we do is we go throughout different communities in different spaces, and we hold our own every once in a while as well, where we really educate people about what their rights are as patients. So we tell them what questions you should be asking, letting them know you can ask questions, because parents feel like sometimes when they're in that exam room with their doctor, they feel like they can't ask anything, or they feel like they'll be penalized. So just really helping them to understand what their rights are and letting them know what is available, like which hospitals do breeching births and deliver breech births, and which, like, just giving them inside information that they wouldn't have known, so they know they have options and they know that they don't have to have a C-section, or there are things that you don't have to do, right? And just having them understand what that means and what that looks like for them. So giving them those tools back so that they can fight for themselves and for their partners. And we now have just started art therapy workshops, which we're just starting to kind of provide to the community as well. And then we're going to be doing pregnancy yoga as well very soon. So those are kind of like our classes, so to say, and they're all free to the public. And we were lucky enough to be funded by the government. So all of our services are free. And then in addition to that, we also are working towards policy, and we do some research. So we're doing a study now where we're trying to just analyze all of the prenatal, postnatal services that are provided in Toronto. And we're analyzing what's culturally competent versus what's not. And we just want the Toronto maternal health care sector to see very clearly where they're failing, and the fact that we have nothing for our racialized populations. We have a very minimal services that are available specifically for them and by them. So we're trying to highlight these things so that we can really see some progressive change. And then we're also working towards the policy piece, where we're going to really work on developing policies or changing policies to really suit and support racialized communities here. And it is a little more difficult for us because we don't collect race data here. So we don't know who has what issue. So people go to the hospital and give birth every day, but we don't know whether they're white, black, Asian. We don't know what they are, right? So when somebody has a complication, we don't know who's having that complication. So it's hard for us to know on paper whether or not we're seeing an increase in issues within the Black community or within the Latino community. Like, we wouldn't know, right? The only reason why we even have any evidence is because of our qualitative research, because we sat down with mothers and parents and asked them what their outcomes were like, and asked them those very hard questions to allow us to know that there is a very similar issue here that's mirroring from what's going on in the US. It's just the difference is here, for some reason, we're not talking about it, and it's being swept under a rug, and our women are dying. So for me, it's important to remove that rug and make sure people are very aware that we have the same issue here. It's just not being talked about. So that's why that piece is, we're passionate about that. And that's kind of like what led to the conference. So the conference, we did our second one this year, and it's a racialized maternal health conference. And the point, again, was to be able to, because we realized as time went by that people were doing research in this, but nobody was connecting. We didn't know who was doing what. I felt like a lone ranger for a very long time, thinking I was the only one, but finding out that there are more people doing stuff, but we're just not connected. So what we wanted to do was bring everyone together, and then also educate, to be super honest, the white clinicians who just wanted to understand, how do I serve this population? How do I do it properly? And that's what the conference is for. It's being able to bring in experts who can really educate different clinicians in our community and parents as well. But then also for it to be a space where people can create dialogue and network and build collaborations for different programming and stuff like that to support our community. And I was so happy after the first year to have people come up to me and say, our organization partnered with this organization, and now we're providing services to the Somali community or to whatever community. Hearing things like that, to me, helped me realize that what we were doing was actually working. And we started off with like almost 200 people at our conference the first year to almost 400 in our second year. So we're really excited to see it growing so much, and to see that hopefully will be some type of a change or a push for advocacy in this area.
Great. And can you talk more about how the in-person events you've done have led to marketing efforts for your business, or how they've led to kind of new clients or new partnerships? Yeah,
I think what's really interesting for me over time is that I always tell people MommyMonitor hasn't begun to advertise at all. If you look online, we haven't done any Facebook ads. We have done nothing yet. And it's so interesting to me how pitch competitions work, how research works, how these different programming and word of mouth specifically, how that works. I think that for us, what has really helped to showcase us are the competitions we've been a part of and we've been lucky enough to win and awarded. And then also, in addition to that, just the work, doing the work, right? And being sincere about the work that we're doing. And I think that for me as an entrepreneur is just realizing that I see where people win and where they don't win. And people who win because they're sincere and because they're doing something they're truly passionate about and they truly love. And then it's not a situation where they're working to make $1 million or just as exit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think everybody wants to be able to do those things, right, successfully. But I think the people who have truly made impacts on the world, like have a stamp on this planet, are the people who did it with sincerity. And we're just like, we're doing this because we want to see lives change. And I think that's where the difference comes from. And I think that's where how people hear about us and where the word of mouth starts to kick in, because people notice it and then they're like, hey, did you hear about this going on? And they tell their friend and their friend tells their friend, and it just goes on. And I've gotten a million phone calls and emails, especially even from the States, truthfully, just from that alone. So I always say that that's a huge piece of it. The other piece is truly competitions. We did the WeWork creator competition. We won that probably a year or two ago, probably.
Can you share more about that process with WeWork?
Yeah, it was really simple. To be honest, I just went on their website and applied for the Creator Awards. And it was like a really simple 1-page application. It wasn't extensive. Did that, completed it. And we were one of the 10 people who were awarded the Creator Award, the Incubate Award, which is for companies that are just starting up in the ideation kind of stage. And what was really interesting to me is that I know a lot of people who apply and never really get through, and they're always asking me, did you write anything special? Did you do anything? Like, give us some tips. And truthfully, I didn't do anything special. I think what differentiates people, and just from looking at the other people who won the same award, I think that what they were looking for are people who are true to something different. So people who are doing something that was different, so whether it was in a different sector, whether it's environmental stuff or healthcare or the textile area, there was a guy who won who just was this storaging for sneakers for people and turned it into a business. And it became very successful because he was doing it for like celebrities and stuff like that who had millions of Jordans and didn't have no place to put them. There was a girl who was creating textiles from India who takes scraps and would turn the scraps into new fabrics. So like there was a girl who, I think Jovan was her name, who just created from Detroit, who just created her own wraps and her own stuff, but was doing it in a way that was all female led with only female producers, female everything, and had that feminist kind of female kind of aspect that kind of went with that. There were so many amazing people who were doing different things there, but everything that they were doing was very specific and very clear in terms of what they wanted their outcome to be, in terms of the audience they wanted to engage. It was very specific. And I think that's what made the difference.
Can you share more of the competitions?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pro pitch competitions, and there's a lot of people who are not. They think it's a waste of time, but like I like them. I just think that they've given me the opportunity to market ourselves in a way that I've never had the opportunity to before. And we've pitched at like a bunch of competitions. So we've done WeWork. And there's another Black one that they do in Toronto for the Black Arts and Innovation, something like that. I forgot the full name of it, but there's something like that in Toronto that's done. I did the CSI one. I did Afrotech recently. I did Black Women in Tech last year. I've done like a few smaller ones in Toronto as well. So those are kind of like the bigger ones that I've done. With all of them, to be honest, for me, I knew a lot of times that I probably wouldn't get to the finals because our product, we don't have that traction. Our product isn't 100% ready yet. So I understood, because there's people who come who have been doing their business for a year or two and they have revenue and they can kind of demonstrate that. But what I wanted was the marketing that came from that. And I just wanted people to know who we were and know that we're on the horizon and be aware that we're here, so that when things are ready, they're already tapped into us. So for me, pitch competitions are bigger than just kind of winning a prize of $10,000 or whatever. For me, it's really who's in the audience, who's in the room. I really take time and analyze that ahead of time and try to understand who's there, who could potentially be beneficial to our business and help us to move forward, who are the right people who can introduce us to the right people to help us move forward. What space do we want to be in, right? And once you kind of sort that out, then that helps you to figure out where to pitch, what competition to pitch for, and then also just being aware about what you'll possibly get and what you won't get. and then being a little aggressive about it. I remember the Black woman in tech one. I wanted to pitch really badly because I was like, I just want to do it because it's Black women. I was just excited because they don't have anything like that here. So I was just like, I just want to be in the space. I want to see what it's like. I just want to be there. That's all I wanted. And I remember I hadn't heard back from them for a while. And I was like, what is going on? So I started emailing them and I was like, hey, just want to know what's going on. Hey, has anything changed? Have you guys chosen your pitch finals yet? Hey. And after a while, they're like, you got it. So it's like,
persistence.
Exactly. It matters. And that's just me, just because I that's probably just my personality. But generally, though, I would say it helps because people remember you. Sometimes all it takes is for people to remember you. And what I love, especially at Afrotech, the best part of that experience was after pitching, getting off the stage and having people come to you and say, I get it. This is needed. Or tell you stories about people they know and telling you how I wish they would have had this. I wish they would have had this opportunity to use this. This is amazing. And just knowing, for me, the validation comes from the public and knowing, especially the market, like Black women specifically, or women generally, to be honest, knowing that they get it and that they see the need for it. And what I love, what's a bonus, is when fathers come and say, I wish my partner, my wife would have had this when she was pregnant. She would have loved this, or I would have loved this, just so I could understand what was going on. You know what I mean? So for me, that's what made those experiences positive, 100%. But yeah, the application process for all of them are generally the same. For all of them, it was like you applied on their website or some type of portal, and it was always just one page, like Google Doc form. And then they kind of just chose from there. So nothing super different.
And can you talk more about the tech ecosystem in Canada and in Toronto?
Yeah. So right now, the tech ecosystem in Toronto is really growing. It's really buzzing. It's becoming more of a hub now. And I think people are recognizing us, and the people who are here, there are not many Black entrepreneurs or tech entrepreneurs specifically in Toronto. There's a few of us, but not many women even specifically. There's probably about a handful of us. And I think that outside of that, I think things are doing quite well. I've been a part of various programs, entrepreneurial programs that are well known in Canada. There's one called Next 36 or UTES, which is a part of the University of Toronto, which is the school that I go to for graduate school. And all these programs are very well known. And they're kind of like, oh, if you're a part of that, people know you're like kind of not the elite, but the class of students, I guess, in the tech space or in the entrepreneurial space who are likely to succeed. They think that because a large group of them have gone on to be a part of Y Combinator, have been a part of a million different things, have created various startups, have done amazing things, right? Made millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera. But what I've noticed is that as much as it's open for like white men specifically, there's a lot of challenges for the rest of us. And I try not to dwell on them because I try to be seen as an entrepreneur first more than anything else, although I am a Black woman and people will see me as a Black woman before anything else. For me, what's more important than anything else is having people see my work ethic and see the product itself and see that it actually serves the need that it was supposed to serve, right? And which is why a large part of my focus and everything I do is really focused on accountability and transparency and all the work that we do in any funding that we get in anything where we're at as a business. Like, I believe integrity is very important for a business, and just ensuring that the customer base or the clientele that could potentially work with you understands that they can trust you and they can trust what you're doing. But what I find is that it's difficult in this space to do the work that you want to do because the resources and the support that you would want to get in Toronto specifically is probably not here for those who are Black, especially if you're a Black woman. I think that I've slightly been favored in this space, and I think that has more to do with education than anything else, if I'm going to be super honest. I think it's more just this is a smart Black girl. She's trying to do something that's great. Let's kind of showcase her so we don't look racist and we look like we have diversity and we're inclusive. Those are the big words they like to use for everything now. But I think that's my particular case because I have counterparts, friends who have great ideas, but for some reason, people aren't really looking at them as favorably. And I realize the only difference is education between us. So that's just my perception. But I've seen it over and over again where there's pitch competitions and there are white guys who come with just one little idea and they hardly have a scrap of paper. They don't have nothing prepared. but they still manage to leave with millions of dollars, and VCs who are just like, oh, I really trust this guy. And I do understand that they're investing in the brand and they're investing in you and not necessarily the idea or the business a lot of the times, because they invest in the entrepreneur at the end of the day. They want to know that you can make money and they want to believe that. But I still think it's important for them to be a little more open, like to understand their biases as VCs and be more open to different markets and to different ideas and different entrepreneurs, which they're not as open to here. And I think that's just because of a lack of understanding and really just a lack of accessibility. So like I think especially Black people working in the government public service here are really making an effort to try to find funding for tech companies, especially Black people in tech, and support them and find ways to support them and connect them to other people, which I think has been huge. I'm most thankful for, because that's what saved us basically in the work that we're doing up to this point.
Great. So what's next? What product or feature are you building out?
Oh, I'm so excited. We have the app that we're building, and hopefully the app will be done like spring this year. We're partnering with a tech company to help us to really get it out so that it's done very well. But outside of that, we're looking at virtual reality. We're looking at trying to provide support for moms postpartum using virtual reality, or prenatal using virtual reality. And again, it all comes back to the same mandate that we have. It's increasing health equity, but also making maternal healthcare much more accessible to parents, right? And in so many states, well, I can speak for Canada specifically. In Nova Scotia, which is one of our provinces, they don't even have prenatal care online anymore. They don't give prenatal care in person anymore. There's nothing. For me, it's important to understand, like, I see how things are changing, especially within North America, how prenatal care is disappearing, and people weren't using it. So it's scarier now to see that actual governments and budgets are cutting it entirely. And they're just like, because people go online, let people focus on online, or people just feeling like, I don't want to go. Like, there's a million and one stories I hear about moms who have like 4 kids, but they're pregnant again, but they don't want to go to prenatal care because they have no one to babysit their children. So they just stay home. You know what I mean? Like things like that. These are the people for me that I want to serve, and being able to have a headset or something at home that they can use to educate them or to support them, I think is really important. And I also envision things that are scalable, that can be used in any context throughout the world. So why MommyMonitor, I think, is going to succeed and do extremely well is because that it can be used anywhere from rural Alabama to to like Toronto, to Northern Ontario, to like Ghana, to Ethiopia, wherever, Jamaica. It doesn't matter where you are. It will work. It's that simple and that scalable that it'll work in any context. And it doesn't just help us. It helps governments. It helps hospitals. It helps everyone. So for me, that's what makes us successful, what makes us different. And that's why we'll win in this space. And also just generally because we will really help people. And I really believe that we are in a space where we can revolutionize maternal health care. And that's, for me, if we can save lives, just imagine the impact, right? Imagine the people who could potentially have their lives saved. Because we already know that as much as we want to focus on the poorer women or social economic status or whatever it looks like, these maternal health care complications has no specific face, right? Or no specific experience. We see people like Serena, who are some of the fittest, wealthiest women in the world, who are still having the same issues as somebody else who would live in a community who has nothing. So for me, just realizing that this issue goes beyond the intersectionality of it, and that these issues go beyond just how much money you make or your weight or whatever, your genetic disposition, whatever that looks like. Knowing that makes me realize that there's more to this. There's more research that needs to be done, which is something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm going to focus on and really understanding why Black women are experiencing the outcomes that they're experiencing, but then also just building the tools to ensure that once we understand where the problem is coming from, we understand how to solve it. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited I'm getting a lot of love from the States, especially like New York and different states. And I'm so excited to kind of venture there as well and to really support different states and see what we can do. And we're working on trying to develop collaborations now with different hospitals or whatever that looks like, organizations, to be able to have our app working there as well while we're working in Canada. And yeah, that's, for me, those are the most important things right now, just understanding that and serving communities. And that's all we really can do, right?
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and excited where you go next.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Chelsea Lowe. More resources for Black women tech founders are available at blackwomentalktech.com. This podcast was produced by the Enterprise Center's The Grit Studios. Links to resources mentioned are available in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Catch you next time on the Black Women Talk Tech podcast.